In this discussion, what I want to talk about are some of the things that I do and do not believe about the Bible. At one point in time, I used to believe all the stories in the Bible as being something that literally had taken place. And during that time, what I found myself doing is wrestling with many concepts that would be just unbelievable in any other context other than a biblical context. And so I found myself asking many questions. And eventually I came to a point in my life and studies where I was able to search for the answers to those questions and get over the fear of finding out the answer. And finding the answer, or I should more precisely say the answers, I was able to finally put the Bible in its proper place. What do I mean by that? I mean that I was able to put it in a place where I did not overvalue the content that was in the Bible, and I also did not undervalue the content that was in the Bible. It was in a proper place where I can see it for what it actually is. And what I had come to understand about the Bible is that it is a compilation of historical accounts, parables, political agendas, culture, wisdom, and also myths. And so some of the things that I do believe about the Bible are, like I said, some of the historical accounts. And so I do believe that there were a people called the Israelites, right? I do believe that, according to the evidence. There also were 12 tribes, or 13, depending on how you look at it, right? And they had those 12 or 13 tribes. That I do believe. I also believe that there was a northern and a southern kingdom that also constituted these 12 tribes. On top of that, I do believe that there are figures in the Bible that had actual physical existence, like King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Ezra, even up to Jesus, right? That they actually had actual physical existence in the actual physical world, right? Those are some of the examples. There's more, but those are just a few. Now, as far as the parables, especially those coming from Jesus, many of those parables have extreme value, right? They can be used. And the reason why they are useful is because they're broad and they're general enough to where you can extract meaning from them in various circumstances, right? And they're not so specific to where it only applies to a small amount of things. They're general enough to where you can use it and have many interpretations, and which we'll go over in other videos on some of the ways that many of these parables can be interpreted. The parable of the sower, the parable of the mustard seed, many of these you can extract wisdom out of these no matter what circumstance you're in. And that's why many people have different interpretations of them. They're general enough to allow that interpretation, right? And that's the beauty of it. Now, as far as the political agenda, I do believe that there are political agendas interwoven within the biblical text, right? And when you study many of the scholars' information on the biblical text, you'll find out that there's multiple writers writing these stories, and many of the accounts are interwoven into one single document. And when you start peeling back the layers of the documents, you get to see the agendas that are taking place within the context of the scriptures. And that's why you'll see multiple stories in there told in different ways. There's agendas that are taking place by the writers who are trying to compete for some political power within their narrative, right? So I do believe that political agendas are taking place within the Bible. Now, dealing with the cultural aspect, we see this very clearly within the Bible. It's unmistakably a culture of some people, right? And when we're dealing with culture, we know that culture is a set of practices that set people apart from other people. And so when you're dealing with the biblical culture, that they have a culture that they have established, you see that they're using or they're writing in things like the Mosaic laws, which deal with dietary laws, customs, beliefs, and in the case of the Israelites, the religion and the God and deity that they chose. These are dealing with a culture that's being cultivated, or that has been cultivated, and it's used to distinguish the Israelites from other people, right? That's very clear. So I do believe that that is an aspect of the Bible. It's a cultural belonging to a people who see themselves a certain way within a certain society, right? And this is their writings on how they view the world from their cultural standpoint. Now, I do believe that there is wisdom in the Bible. When you go into the Psalms, the Proverbs, the Wisdom of Solomon, those verses, many of them in there, similar to what we talked about with the Jesus and the parables, they're also broad enough to where someone reading it, you might see it one way, and another person reading it may see it another way. And you can extract wisdom and from those verses to apply to your own life. And that's why you get people with many different interpretations. You start to see that when someone sees it, because it's so vague, the way it registers in someone else's mind may not be the same as it registers in another person's mind, right? That's the beauty of the ambiguity, right? So I'm not looking at this as a bad thing. This is a thing that could work for many different people, right? I'm looking at it as a tool. So there's plenty of wisdom in many areas of the Bible. Now, those are some of the things that I do believe about the Bible. Some of the things that I do not believe about the Bible are when we start going into the exaggerated claims of either characters or historical events that the writers are saying that had taken place. And we can start with Jesus. Now, Jesus happens to be one of the characters in the Bible, which I do like, right? I like what he stood for, and I like a lot of the parables and a lot of the wisdom that he brought. And he was someone who was probably very influential at that time, someone who stood for social change. He was a reformer, and he was someone who didn't lay down to the popular opinion at that time. And so all that stuff is great and wonderful. And from that, I think that character is commendable and also someone of that could be highly esteemed. On the other side, when the writers who are writing about Jesus, when they start adding the exaggerations of his account and taking him from a human into some other type of thing, a mythological character, that's when the line has to be drawn. We got to understand that the people who wrote about Jesus, they wrote about Jesus decades after he was said to have existed. And so they're adding things in there that did not take place, right? It wasn't good enough that he was a social reformer and also was someone who stood for change. They started adding accounts in there and saying that he's someone who rose from the dead. Now, when you start saying that someone rose from the dead, you're taking them from a human figure and you're now bringing them into the realm of mythology. And we know, as a matter of fact, from our own experiences, that people don't rise from the dead. When someone's dead, that means they're gone. It's over with. There's no coming back from someone who's dead. And when people start writing accounts like this about people, we know that we cannot take this account seriously, right? We have to start interpreting these accounts as something else other than a literal account, right? Especially when the authors are being more specific about talking about how he rose on the third day. The interpretation that especially I learned to develop is when I start seeing these mythological writings and making these humans do supernatural things, especially when conjoined with numbers and things of that nature, I start to see that this is telling me that the writers are not meaning this to be taken literal, and that they are veiling or covering, using the story to veil or cover some other type of meaning, right? And other types of information. And we can see this all throughout the Bible, where there's numbers tied to these supernatural events. What is letting us know that is written in some coded language which the priest understood, but the layperson will not understand. Right? So that's how I interpret any of these supernatural things, starting with Jesus rising from the dead on the third day. Right? Another thing that I do not believe about, especially about the Jesus account, is about Jesus also raising other people from the dead. Right? We know that that doesn't happen. People don't raise other people from the dead, let alone raise themselves from the dead. This doesn't happen in the actual physical, objective world. In the world of imagination, yes, it does happen. In mythology, yes, it does happen. In the world of actual physical, objective being, that does not happen, right? And all of us know this. We all know this, right? So Jesus raising other people from the dead, I'm not going with that. Jesus walking on water, that's another one of the things. This is taking it into mythology now and attaching superstition and all types of other folklore and fairy tales to it. Right? The same way I don't believe Santa Claus is coming down the chimney, I don't believe someone is rising from the dead, raising other people from the dead, or walking on water. Right? So that's dealing with the Jesus account. And like I said, other than that, the teachings are great. I think the teachings are great. A lot of them. Right? There's wisdom that could be extracted from Jesus, but the writers have other motives when they're putting this together. Right? And they're using other coded language. And we'll go over some of this stuff in other videos on how other ways that these can be interpreted. But literally, it does not align with actual reality. Right? So that's how I'm looking at it. And so another thing that I do not believe about the Bible is when it says that Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Understand, here we go. Just like Jesus dying and resurrecting on the 3rd day, we're attaching numbers to some supernatural event. It's letting us know that it's veiling or covering up some other information and meaning. It's coded. Right? We understand that people don't get swallowed by fish and live for 3 days and 3 nights. We understand that people don't die and resurrect on the 3rd day. In the objective physical world. Right? In the world of imagination, absolutely. Not in the physical world. Right? So Jonah, 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish, I'm not having it. Right? I know that this is mythology. The same way that I don't believe that Moses stretched out his hand and there was darkness over the land of Egypt for 3 days. Supernatural event tied to a number automatically tells me to not interpret this literally, but to find a metaphysical meaning for this. When I look at this account, I don't look at it literally. I used to at one time, but then after further investigation, that's not the case, right? Moses with 3 days causing darkness on the land of Egypt, Jonah 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish, Jesus dying and resurrecting on the 3rd day are veils for other meanings codified in the text, and other meanings that the priests understand that was not meant to be given to the outer courts. Right? So those are 3 accounts there. Another thing that I do not believe is that Aaron threw down his rod and it turned into a serpent. We don't have to go back and forth on any of these accounts because we all understand that this doesn't happen in the physical world, right? In the world of imagination, absolutely, right? And in the world of imagination, I want to be clear that this is not like some unuseful world. The world of imagination is extremely important. Let's let that be known right now. And that's for other videos where we'll go more in depth into it. The world of imagination is extremely critical and important. But we have to understand that there's some things, actually many things, that can take place in the realm of imagination that cannot materialize into the physical objective world. Right? And that's key to understanding how to separate something that's in the imagination of someone versus something that can actually be an event that has occurred in the actual world of flesh and blood. Right? They're 2 different worlds, but they do have some correlation and correspondence to one another, which we'll talk about in other videos. But some of these things in here, dying and coming back from the dead, swallowed in the belly of the fish for 3 days, darkness over the land by waving someone's hand, these things cannot happen in the material world. Right? We understand this. Every one of us understand this. But some people don't want to accept this. And I used to be one of those at one point. Right? And I'm confident enough that these things don't happen to not try to force someone who doesn't believe that or doesn't understand that to change whatever it is that they believe. If someone wants to believe that Moses did this or that Jesus did that, if they want to believe that, I'm fine with people believing that, right? That is absolutely 100% perfect for someone to believe, right? You can have that. That's your right to have those type of beliefs. I'm saying that this is something that I'm not going for, right? I'm not going to cloud my perception of reality with having those types of beliefs, right? And the thing is with the religious person, because they don't really have the confidence in these beliefs, they feel the need that they have to go and jam those beliefs on other people, right? Especially the proselytizing religions, the ones that go out to try to convert people. And the reason why is because there's power in numbers. And what that means is that you can get lots of people to believe something that's insane. And the fact that you can get lots of people to believe something that's insane, it could make those people believe that it's actually something that's reasonable. Because of the sheer power of numbers. You believe it, I believe it, we all believe it. Therefore, it must be a reasonable thing to believe. Right? That's the power of numbers and having a lot of people believe something. And so another thing that I do not believe in the Bible is when it says that Eve, the woman, is taken from the rib of Adam, the man. Right? And that's how she was made, from the rib of Adam. I don't believe that to be a literal event that has taken place. And I don't believe the priests writing it believe that either. That it's meant to be a story and it has an outer meaning for the general public and it has an inner meaning for those constructing it and writing it, in which they use and they keep with themselves, and the outer meaning is used for the other people. And you'll find out that people have been doing this also for thousands of years in all different cultures. The Bible is no exception, right? So this is what I do and do not believe about the Bible. And like I said, there's some accounts that I do believe to have taken place, some of the historical accounts, some of the kings, some of the captivities that they explain in there, and some of the worships of the other deities and the dilemmas that are taking place. Many of those I believe to have occurred. But when we start going into the exaggeration and to the way far left and far right and going all over the place with the supernatural, I'm not gonna look at it as those people are being dumb. The priest, I'm looking at it, they know exactly what they're doing, and they're carefully crafting the stuff in order to make it say something. And whatever they give to the outer court, that's what the outer court receives. But within, it's a coded language. And so I interpret those in a coded language form. And whether the meaning that I extract from it is the same as what those people who wrote it extract from it or have meant it to be, that's a different story. It may not be the case, but that doesn't matter, right? Because those people are long gone, and we may never find out the exact meaning of what they meant by those accounts, but we do know that they're veiling other meanings behind it, and that they were not as foolish as to write some of the things and take them to be a literal accounts, right? And so I don't take them to be literal either. Right? And so this is my take on it. This is what I do and do not believe. So hopefully you found something in this video of use. And, and that's just the way it goes. So my name is Brooklyn St. Michael, and I want to thank you for watching the video.